start streaming. So in a couple of minutes, it should appear on all of them anyway. Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. So won't appear on Facebook until exactly 7 o'clock, though, just the way Facebook works.
Okay.
So we'll give it a sec. I've got my phone in front of me anyway, so once it appears on Facebook, I'll start chatting.
Cool.
It's always really awkward when you do little live things like this. These are the kind of things when you guys make your videos, you can easily trim off and hide. So I have to do all of it live. It's a bit more of a complex thing to do.
Yeah.
How's the channel going anyway?
It's kind of alright. It's quite busy at the moment on YouTube because everyone's bored. So.
Well, people are looking for more things to watch, and everyone's watched the shit out of Netflix, so there's not a lot left to watch. Once you've seen Tiger King and every crime documentary going, you start looking elsewhere for your entertainment. Right.
But yeah, it's going alright. I'm enjoying it as a hobby. So
good stuff. Right. Well, Cy Owens just joined us on Facebook, so the Facebook stream's live. And if the Facebook stream's live, it means that the YouTube and Twitch will also be live as well. Woody's just joined us, Duncan Woodward. I'm sure a few more people will stick their hands up and say hello in a second. So, hi guys, how's it going? Hope you're all having a good day. It's now 26th of May and we are quite a way into lockdown, although according to Mr. Johnson, that's all going to be lifted. And according to most of the country, no one gives a shit from what I've seen from pictures on the internet. So, sun's out, the idiots are out, and everyone's just going to catch COVID zombie disease. So I'm staying indoors and continuing to enjoy myself from in here. But I hope you all are alright anyway. I hope you've all returned to work and getting the pennies coming back in, and you can start indulging in your retro gaming hobby again real soon. It's been a lovely day again today. I've been in bed for most of it, I won't lie. My sleep patterns are all off to shit, and to be honest, I don't know what day of the week it is, let alone what time of the day it is. So I'm just doing my thing to keep myself entertained and hopefully throw some things your way and keep you guys entertained as well. So today, guys, this is episode 5 of Retrogaming Room 101, and joining me today, I have on a retro tip. Sorry, I always say on a retro trip. I don't know what it is. It's always it's always a slip of the tongue. And this is Pete here. So you want to say hello, Pete?
Hi guys, how you doing?
And Pete is quite a popular YouTuber. He's part of the familiar crowd that does the rounds at events, and you're a big Sega guy, aren't you? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. Big Sega guy. Kind of grew up with Mega Drive and Amiga around the same time, so they're my kind of two most fond systems, I'd say. They're
your go-to systems. Are those the platforms you tend to play most when you go back and do some actual gaming?
I play a hell of a lot of Mega Drive. Amiga, I kind of go through phases of playing a lot and then playing none. But I do play a fair bit of stuff that I never really experienced as a kid, you know, like Saturn for one. I never really even saw one. So
it is good, I suppose, when now we've got the luxury of being able to buy all these systems. Even when you're big into a certain system, it's great now that you know, with a few quid spare, you can buy all those things that eluded you. You know what I mean? That's my big part when it comes to collecting, because I only collect hardware. I'm not a big software collector. As much as I love, I like Nintendo. SNES was my favourite all-time console, but I never felt really inclined to collect for it because I experienced most of it firsthand back in the day, and I still own some of the bits I had from back then as well. So now I'm more about collecting the consoles I didn't have and some of the seriously rare shit as well. That's how I tend to be. So I know exactly where you're coming from. So I was speaking to Pete the other day, guys, and some people have been racking their brains over what they want to talk about here on Retro Gaming Room 101. There's a lot of topics not yet covered. There's a lot of people saying they still want to get on and cover some things. And I know Pete went back for about a week having to think about what he wanted to cover. And I'm just going to uncover it now. And this is going to be the topic for today. The topic is gatekeepers. Now, this is something, it's going to be a lot easier for Pete to explain to you than it is for me. I know exactly where he's coming from. So, Pete, after you, mate.
So gatekeepers or just gatekeeping in general, meaning that, you know, people who try and kind of put barriers up or rules up around a hobby, and it happens in all hobbies, it happens in this hobby. like the gaming side and the collecting side, and even the kind of YouTube side, from my point of view. Just people imposing these imaginary rules, like, you know, you must do this, you must do that. You know, people have their own set of rules for everything, and yeah, I think it's just madness. Like, a classic example is, you know, people having a CRT to play their retro consoles.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think you can't beat a CRT. I've got a CRT in here, but if someone wants to just plug it into their LCD and that's the means they have, then let them enjoy it. You know, if they're enjoying the game, what is the issue?
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, obviously I've started streaming a lot recently, and obviously people know me from doing the events and stuff. And when it comes to the events, we do try and put out as many CRTs as we can. But after the first 2-3 years we were doing it, you do start to realise that the biggest reason why we moved away from CRTs, and as much as we try and keep the experience as close to original as possible, you have to start looking at practicality. And at the end of the day, we've all got busy lives these days. We've all got other things we'd rather be doing. Do we really want to go down the avenue of going the most complicated route just to do the things we enjoy? It doesn't make a lot of sense, you know. It's like, you know, it might be perfectly acceptable. Thinking about the most basic analogy, it's like it might have been perfectly acceptable to walk everywhere or bike everywhere, but the second I got a car, I never look back, because why am I going to make things difficult for myself? I love to be out and about, and I love to go places, but I'm not going to start catching buses when I've got a car on my drive, or, you know, things like that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And yeah, I think you're right when it comes to the especially the whole display issue thing. One of the topics I'll be covering actually at one point will actually be display snobbery, because it's something I've noticed a lot of. I mean, there's people out there for sure who all they do is they just love to impose the way they do things, or impose the ideal way of doing things that as they see it, even when they don't do it themselves. And it's just not right. I mean, in gaming, there's tons of examples. I mean, you were talking about things like YouTube. Obviously, I'm not as experienced with YouTube as you are, but I'm sure you can relay some kind of anecdote as to give an example of where people there are trying to tell you how to do things.
Yeah, I mean, it goes on all the time. Just you know, you should be doing it this certain way or that certain way, or, you know, you're not legit if you don't, you know, follow these imaginary rules. I'm struggling to think of anything in particular on that side of stuff, but you do get a lot of it, just people saying that, you know, this particular style of video you should be doing, or this, that, and the other. And at the end of the day, it's YouTube for a reason. It's you do you on there.
Yeah.
You do what you want to do. Who cares? Like, you know, if everybody followed all the same rules on YouTube, everybody would have the same channel, and it would be boring. The beauty of it is everybody's free to do what they want. They've got their own, you know, style or whatever. And if those people don't like it, you know, they're free to not watch. And I always say it's madness, because it's like, if you were walking down the street and you passed a dress shop, would you open the door and shout at the shop owner, "I don't want a dress"? And the woman would just say, "Well, they're not for you."
Well, maybe you do, mate. Maybe you do.
Yeah. Why have you stopped here to say that? And it's the same on YouTube. Like, no one's forcing you to stop and watch a video if you don't like what you see. Yeah. That could be a whole other topic.
No, I can relate. I mean, speaking from my own experience, people know me for doing what I do with the events and the arcade side of things. I'm new to all this video stuff, and I've never been someone who's been really comfortable, particularly on stage, or not too bad about speaking in public, but I don't like being like the focus or anything like that. And starting this channel and that, I was just talking to you about as the stream started there, I started streaming live videos on Facebook because it was convenient to do, and I started doing that about 2 years ago. And part of my motivation for doing it was because I wanted to cover a lot about what the Spectrum Next was doing. I was having access to the early access to the games. I was having early access to, you know, a lot of the software changes that were happening, and I wanted to share them with other people. I didn't just want to talk about them or throw up a video bragging that I got it. I wanted to show everybody else what I was doing. Now, all I had, you know, to do that, I had my phone. right? I had no camera, I had no microphone, I had no sound stage, I had nothing fancy, except me sat on my kitchen table, just as I'm doing now. Nothing's changed. Filming what I'm doing, talking to people about what I enjoy. And that's what it's all about. You talk about YouTube. I mean, I think that's something that's definitely been lost as time has gone on, because when the YouTube I know kind of bore out of that Web 2.0 atmosphere where everybody was creating viral videos, highly compressed, shitty MPEGs that would get passed around on works emails and things like that. That was how YouTube, that was what it born out of. You used to have to go to dedicated news groups to get videos all in one place at one point. And when YouTube started, some of the earliest stuff I remember watching on here was like, it was just like what I was doing on Facebook. But there was a lot of people on Facebook who were saying, you've got to get on YouTube, you've got to start using streaming software, you've got to get yourself a top-end mic, you've got to get yourself lighting. And I'm like, why? Why do I have to do that? Why do I have to do any of that? I don't really see the point. It's like, I'm doing it for me, and I'm doing it for the people who are like me. I'm not doing it because I want to start a big following. I'm not doing it because I want to start a big kind of show. I just want to share a bit of what I'm doing and have people listen to what I say, rather than trying to come across and make myself a personality. I just want to share a bit of what I do. So I can totally relate in regards to that. Do you think that this gatekeeping thing has just become, maybe though, a sign of times moving on? I mean, is it the fact that, is it a case that, as we've been spoilt for technology and spoilt for choice, do you think people have got more petty about things?
I don't know. Maybe it's always been there. It's kind of human nature in a way, but I don't know. It's weird, like you're saying about, using your phone and stuff like that. Like, you'll get those people who are like, oh, you need to get better gear, you need to get this. And then there's the people at the other end where if you have the better gear, they'll be like, you should be doing this on a phone, you should be doing this like low budget. So like, you can't please everybody anyway. So, I think it is just human nature for people to moan. maybe it's a British thing especially, but
well, I think I'll be
people
a hypocrite.
like to have a moan, don't they?
I think I'll be a hypocrite to say otherwise, because this series is called Retrogaming Room 101, and the whole point of this is somewhere for people to come and put their gripes together. To be honest, that is very much at the heart of why I started this series, because everybody out there has got their complaints. I mean, I'm more vocal about my gripes than a lot of people out there, admittedly, and I quite often will share my little rants on Facebook, but they're never unfounded, and I've usually got a reason behind them. But at the same time, my message is always, generally speaking, that to do your own thing, to be your own person and let people be their own person. There's certain ways, things can be done better, and there's certain ways people can enjoy hobbies that might be advantageous. But there's a difference between saying to somebody, oh, do you know this is available, and then saying to somebody, no, you can't do it that way because you're an idiot. Do you know what I mean? One of the biggest things when it comes to gaming is the whole emulation versus real system.
Exactly.
I mean, how do you feel about that in general?
I feel about all this stuff that, if someone's enjoying it a certain way, crack on. The only kind of gatekeepy thing I do is that, like, aspect ratio.
Yeah.
Because like, even if you have the crappiest LCD modern TV and you plug a Mega Drive in, you can still press that button on the remote to change it to 4:3. You don't have to play it 16:9.
No,
and that's the only thing that kind of is like, just press the button. It's how the designers intended it to be. But
does it trigger you when you see people then with playing 4:3 games in widescreen?
A little bit, but then it's like, well, I'm not doing it at home, so that, whatever.
They're not hurting you, are they?
No, but I mean, if someone wants to just stick a Mega Drive into their modern TV, they can crack on. And with all this stuff, I worry about newcomers. I always think of it from a newcomer's perspective. So, like, it's always nice to see young kids getting into stuff like the old Sega and all that. And imagine you're like an 18-year-old kid and you just discover there's this scene on YouTube and Facebook and all that, and you join a couple of Facebook groups, and then suddenly everybody's telling you, oh, you're set up shit, you needed this, that, and the other. it's not a nice welcome to the community, is it?
No, it's definitely not. But do you think maybe that without at least a little bit of this obsessiveness that people have got, don't you think, well, for one, it shows that people are passionate about their hobbies. Don't you think it can be helpful to newcomers, though, in that, newcomers might wade into something and be completely clueless about what's going on? I mean, do you think there's a place for people to...
Well, yeah, gatekeeping is specifically, people who are like, you're not a true this, that, and the other, and it happens in all fandoms, especially like comics and stuff, where like, if you're a true fan, name 10, this, that, and the other. But I mean, there's a difference between giving constructive advice and being a gatekeeper, isn't there? Yeah, and
just say it like it is, mate.
Yeah, exactly. Like, suggest some options to someone. Like, I love all the tech and that. I've got an OSSC to run in my, my LCD when I am recording and stuff, and I love all that tech stuff. And like you said, some of that obsession has allowed people to make that tech, which I can now enjoy. But there's a difference between pointing out that this stuff exists, and it is always very expensive. Like, this stuff isn't cheap, these fancy like upscalers and everything. There's a difference between that and just telling someone, well, you're not a proper retro gamer if this, that, and the other, if you're on an LCD or whatever. And it's like, well, they're enjoying retro games. What more is there to it,
Do you think there's any element of perhaps greed and envy involved in it? Because, I mean, what you said there, talking about technology moving on, you've got these devices that allow you to do these things that early on people were saying, we've got to have that, we've got to have that. And you've obviously gone ahead and bought that yourself. Do you think maybe people try and push the narrative a certain way in order for people to sell products that force everyone to game the same way, do you think?
I don't know, maybe, but I mean, who knows what goes on in some people's heads? But
well, maybe not on a mass market, but think about like the hobbyist market, like the OSSC it would have been something that would have come from a hobbyist shed as opposed to a mass production thing. Think about things like some of the FPGA emulation devices. I mean, the Pi is the biggest example. I know that's not a true FPGA, but what I mean is, it's like that was a device that was created out of necessity, and they talked about all its possibilities. But let's face it, all it's become recognised for and known for now is as a pocket emulation device that can be shoved into any tiny device. Do you know what I mean? Do you think any of those people out there encourage people to try and think a certain way?
Maybe. I mean, it'd be a bit of a genius marketing strategy, wouldn't it, if that is the case?
Well, viral marketing's the thing these days. You know what I mean? You don't know how far people can take it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who've they've probably been on the victim end of this, and I think there'll be a lot of people out there who perhaps be lying if they said they'd never done a little bit of it themselves. One of the biggest things you'll find that is going to be a cause of this is fanboyism, because being a fanboy, it's like, back in the day when people defending their Spectrum and all their Commodore 64 in the earliest playground arguments, it was obvious, that the Commodore 64 was a superior machine with much higher tech. It was a more expensive computer. The Spectrum had colour clash, it was cheap, it didn't have a joystick interface. But people still, fought vehemently for their champion computer, and they would make arguments to make other people want it. I mean, thinking back to the Sega Nintendo days, when it came to the Mega Drive, Sega of America didn't have a lot of legs to stand on in terms of tech spec comparison with the Super Nintendo. And obviously the Super Nintendo, well, they did when it came to the NES, but it didn't carry over to the Super NES, because the Super NES had hardware expansion through custom chips. And that was where this blast processing bullshit came from. Yeah. And if it hadn't have been for things like that, they were telling you need, it's proto-viral marketing. They're telling you need to have this faster processor in order to get better games. What people do now, defending their things, maybe they are just trying to push people towards a certain way of thinking, if not necessarily for profit. I mean, maybe just to increase the user base of things that they do, maybe so more people buy a niche product that more people can get on board with, just so they can have gaming the way they want it, you know.
Yeah.
So
quite possibly.
Right, I'm going to flick over to the chat now, because there's a lot of people joined on. I imagine with you being a popular YouTuber, a lot more people have logged on for that reason. I do know most of these guys, but I'm going to have a quick pan back now. You should be able to see them. A lot of people have said hello, so I'll just go back to the top. Hi Gernaldino, hi Rex Core, hi Paul Cole, hi Az. He says, this isn't HD, I'm off. Yeah, piss off, mate. Hyper Trigger, Dana's on, Steve Baker. Steve Baker comes out with the first interesting comment. I've just found out that people are just generally divs. I mean, if you want to break it down, yeah, there's some people out there who just go out of the way, I think, to be arseholes, and it can be difficult to work your way around those kind of plebs, because as much as you tell people not to listen to certain people, some people will have more influence than others. I mean, going into gaming, there's quite a famous case of that right now, where somebody's tried to control the narrative, and nobody's finally buying that bullshit because everybody knows better now. When it comes to YouTube, one thing that is definitely true, and I'm sure you can relate, is there are some very insincere YouTubers out there, and that they create this, when they cover their gaming topics, they create this very revisionist viewpoint of the way we absorb games back in the day. I mean, I can't think of any particular person in particular, but there's definitely people out there who've created like pseudo documentaries, and they always give this very American viewpoint, and they're saying like, well, you should be more into this for that reason, and you should be more into that for that reason, and the Americans, you show them Spectrum, they would have laughed it off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So who else has got? Everyone should just do how they want. Do tit how they want. Do it how they want. YouTube.
I always do tit how I want, mate. Don't worry about that.
Left tit, right tit. As long as you keep it balanced, you're okay. Hyper Trigger and Dana are having their own little chat about some fish game. Is that something you know anything about?
No idea, but if Hyper Trigger Dylan, he's probably pushing some limited run games on them, because he's a huge advocate for that company. Oh,
so there you go. I mean, that could be an example of where somebody could, try and control a narrative to their own game.
Yeah, true, very true.
Woody said both have their place. Do you think so, Woody? I mean, if you're still there, mate, do you think that people, should be telling people how it's done? I know there's certain things when it comes to the events, and you're setting up consoles and computers. You come to me moaning quite a lot, saying, "I wish they would just do this thing right," and you go insane. Part of my conversation I was having the other night, we were talking about the Spectrum keyboard, the Spectrum 48 keyboard, and I said it was one of the worst things to ever have existed, and I know that flies in the face of popular opinion. I always put joysticks out with my Spectrums at events, but the amount of people who will walk up and they will then pick up that Spectrum and pull it towards them and push that joystick to one side, and they'll love playing on that, or those rubber keys, and I think it's one of the worst things ever. I'm not going to stop them doing it. I think it's lunacy, but
I think part of it's like what you used to like. I mean, I don't really have like many systems from that era, like the old computers, because I had friends with Spectrum and Amstrad and Commodore and everything, but BBC Micro was like my first love, really, for gaming. So I've got one in here, and I always use the keyboard on that, just because it's how I'm used to,
Yeah, I suppose that's definitely one. The BBC Micro, as it happens, is one system I've never really got hands-on with much. In fact, the first one I owned, I bought off Woody after last year's big revival event. It's still up in my room. I haven't had a chance to get it all set up and do a video on it yet, but I'm looking to. Woody actually raised an interesting point there. We were talking about the widescreen and 4:3 aspect ratio thing. He plays Street Fighter 2 in widescreen, but then he crops the top and bottom off to give the correct aspect ratio. I think that's an interesting case in point.
Yeah.
Because the arcade original actually was in a 4:3 aspect, but then when they ported it to the home consoles to have more screen available, they did kind of condense the screen down a little bit, if you know what I mean. They were always displaying on 4 to 3 screens, and in the arcade they would crop them, so you would actually lose a little bit of the sides, if you know what I mean.
But if he's doing that, I mean, you're still maintaining the aspect ratio, aren't you? Overall.
Yes, I guess he is, because obviously if you were to condense a typical Street Fighter 2 display, you would always have a black border at the top and a black border at the bottom.
Yeah.
And if you keep it in 4 to 3, you would then have a black border at top and bottom, as well as the sides, in a full proper letterbox. It looked like playing Star Fox. But if you then stretch it to full width and then crop the top and bottom, you've got closer to the aspect ratio.
Yeah, I think that's my TV, the LCD in here, it's got like a zoom, so you don't have to change it to 16:9. You can zoom that 4:3, so like the bars go. And yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. That's definitely an interesting case in point. Maybe that's something we'll talk about at another point. Paul Cole said the emulation scene is good for real versions of games are finite and one day will cease to function, so emulation is needed to keep history of games on the systems they were made on. Yeah, I think that'll always be the biggest argument for emulation, Paul. I mean, when it comes to the arcades, I know that a lot of criticism goes to people's way who will scrap a PCB, and they will, once a PCB becomes unserviceable, they will just basically junk the PCB and replace it with a PC or a multi-game board. And I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with that, because you can only keep these things kicking and screaming so long. You can't keep them going forever. It's especially true when it comes to the arcade CGA monitors. I mean, you think CRTs are hard to come by for the home. Arcade monitors are like hen's teeth. They really are hard to come by, and it is a bit of a bugbear that people are junking them so quickly, because a lot of them are serviceable if you take them to the right people. But one of the biggest problems I know from experience is that even though I'm pretty well connected with the arcade scene and that, there's a lot of people there who can repair monitors, and they do them for their friends, and they'll help a couple of their own, people amongst their own little circle, but they won't help people like me to get mine repaired, and I'll say I need a monitor repairing, how much would it cost me, and what do I need to order? I'll get everything prepped. Can you do it for me? And it falls on deaf ears. So in a lot of instances, people out there might be left with no options. So it's all well and good them being all starchy and saying you've got to preserve your glass screens, when there's no possible way of going any other way. Do you know what I mean? So it seems pointless that people defend something and say you've got to be a certain way, but then offer you no solution as to how to maintain that specific way. Do you know what I mean?
I do think there's a lot of that in the arcades scene, because they are. I got one of those little bar top things, because I've got no way I'm getting into buying arcade cabs.
Most people haven't.
But a lot of people are, like people who are like, diehard arcade collectors would look down on stuff like that. Yet, like you say, they make the hobby so inaccessible for people that they can't do the real thing anyway. So, people have got no choice but to use these emulation machines or these like little mini arcade things and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that's when people risk coming off as a bit of a dick, because if you come along and say you've got to do it a certain way, and then you don't offer any kind of like you say, it's constructive. If you don't come along with any kind of constructive suggestion on how to do that, you're just coming across as a bit of a dick. You're coming across as elitist, because what you're saying is, well, that's what I do and I can do that. But then you're not giving anybody else a chance to do that. It sucks when people do that. It's like, it's like someone turning up with a brand new sports car to somebody's house who, all they can afford is a shitty little hatchback, and just saying to them, right, we're going on holiday, but you've got to keep up with me. It's like, well, it's not very fair, you know what I mean? You do what you can the best you can. I'll do what I can the best I can. We're still doing the same thing. Let's just kind of agree on a middle ground here, you know what I mean? And it's very much like that. And people who come and offer no suggestions on how to do these things they insist are better, or they won't make some concessions for people that can't do it that way, you just come off as a bit of a knob, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of gatekeeping does come off as the people just being a knob. It's a perfect analogy about the car. I think a lot of people who do this stuff have spent the silly money on the gear, and maybe, like you said, they're just trying to justify the fact that they've spent that much money.
Yeah.
And they've told themselves it's worth it, and then that kind of they fooled themselves, and now they're just passing it on to other people that this is the only way to do it, because it must be, because I spent thousands getting there, you know.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to justify they are the way they are because they broke the bank to do something, and so they say, well, you've all got to do that now, and if you don't, you're fucking stupid. Whereas clearly they're just trying to make sure that their wife doesn't punch them in the head for the thousands they've spent on bullshit.
Exactly.
Is it Hyper Trigger EX? Who's that? Sorry, you know
that's Dylan.
That's Dylan. He's talking about the OSSC, and he said it's not that expensive now. You can get one for just over £100. I know people who spend more than that on one game. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point in itself, because when it comes to like what you love, it's like I was saying about the whole collecting thing. That's one thing we haven't touched on yet, actually. You said like there's people in collecting who definitely say you should be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. I see a lot of collectors telling traders how they should and shouldn't be trading. It's like, if you're a trader, you're in business, you know what I mean? They're not making any kind of, you know, they're not trying to pull the wool over people's eyes in that respect. They're trying to make money, so you're not going to get the best value. And I think when it comes to, you know, as far as preservation goes, most traders now at this point, they're aware you don't put stickers on boxes, you know, you don't leave things exposed in the sunlight, you don't store things in the damp. They know all those kind of things, but it can be a little bit annoying when people say, oh, well, you should. I mean, one thing people were saying to me, I happen to have some games. I'm trying to think what they were now. It might have been my Vectrex collection, actually. I did have some Vectrex games, and I'd come across them as part of a bulk buy years ago. So they didn't cost me much, but I was aware they were increasing in value. And people were saying, well, you do know there's a custom shop box you can get now for these games. You do know you should be, you know, handling it this certain way. And I'm like, listen, I use my games to play. They're not designed to sit on a shelf and gather dust. You know, I love to collect, but I'm just as happy buying. It's something I say a lot in my videos when I cover hardware. I love to buy old consoles, rare systems and things like that. But I'm actually against collecting them in boxes, because I know there's people out there who want to collect them in boxes and they'll want a pristine, you know, a shelf piece. Whereas me, my systems will be out there being used, and they'll be being used regular. So there's no point me having a nice box that I'm going to get battered every weekend when I'm throwing it in the back of a car, I'm transporting it around, and other people are unboxing it. It's going to be used at events. There's no point in that, and it sucks when people try and tell me how I should be looking after these things. You know. I'm sure
it's not really on, is it?
I'm sure you got a few examples on that front yourself. I know you're a collector.
What, from people telling me how to collect and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's endless.
Go on, give us
endless.
There's got to be a prime example there somewhere.
There's like people are like, oh, I mean, even saying like, oh, you should have a huge collection, otherwise, you know, you shouldn't be doing YouTube videos. And then there's other people who, you know, some people who don't have a huge collection but play games. Some people have a big collection, don't play games. Like, everyone does different stuff. I'm trying to think of examples of what people have specifically told me in the past. Or like, you know, if you've got a particularly nostalgic version of something, that, because a lot of the stuff I don't really, I'll just get like a multi-cart for. That's what I did with the Vectrex.
Yeah.
And then I did the same with the BBC. It's got an SD card mod, and my Amiga's got the WHD load. But people just say things about that, like, oh, blah, 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 you know. And a lot of the games that I do buy, for example, on the Amiga, are just the ones that are sort of iconic box art. I'll probably never even actually use the discs because they're on my hard drive anyway. Which probably winds you up, does it?
No, not at all. Not at all.
No, but like, it's kind of artwork. Like, I like the artwork, but a lot of people will be like, oh, you know, you should be getting the Japanese version of that because it's got an extra this, that, and the other, or you should be playing this, or you buy a console and they're like, oh, well, you should have got this version 3 of this console because blah blah blah, and it's like whatever. Like, Jesus Christ, this stuff's endless if we want to go down that route, you know.
Yeah, there's a good example there. Actually, you were talking about the version console. There seems to be this kind of, I mean, yeah, we all know that obviously in the PAL territories we suffered, especially in the earlier days, with us getting the 50 hertz versus the 60 hertz thing. That shouldn't have been a problem in itself, but because of lazy programming and shrunk times, 50 hertz games can be just as fast as 60 hertz games if they're programmed to account for that clock difference. But in the early days, the developers didn't do that because they didn't have the time to do it or the budget. Once a game was made, it was made for 60 hertz. To release in a PAL territory, all they'd do is throw in the European languages, and then that'd be it. They wouldn't touch any of the rest of the game, and that was why you got such, I mean, cases like Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, Sonic on 50 hertz now, it is crippling. You do notice the difference, but as far as like nostalgia goes, that was how we played it, you know, and people tend to forget that was how we experienced it first time round. And I do find it a bit annoying sometimes when there's that almost snobbiness where you come along with this great console, brilliant condition. Oh, look, I'm playing this game, and the first thing people say is, "You should be playing the Japanese version. Japanese version is better." And I'm like, well, why? This is the version I played. This is the version we all play. This is the version you played back in the day.
Yeah,
you know,
probably on RF.
Yeah, on RF. You know, with crappy static, barely tuning in your 12-inch, 14-inch portable in your bedroom. You know, and you're complaining about speed and picture quality or something that you probably didn't even see in 60 hertz till last week. It kind of baffles your brain a bit. You know, you're getting starchy over something you've got no right to be even criticising other people for doing. I think sometimes people do it. Again, it's definitely down to that bragging thing, because there's people out there who can easily modify their own consoles. There's people out there who have got infinitely deep pockets who will go and buy the English version, the American version, the Japanese version. And there are some collectors out there who are lucky enough to have deep enough pockets to buy like 12 different versions of the same game because there were that many different releases, and they're like, oh well, this one's the best. It's like, yeah, we know it is, we know it is, but does it fucking matter? I just want to play the game. I think ultimately collecting's definitely an interesting point, because you got to remember why you're collecting what you collect. It's not like collecting stamps, it's not like collecting shoes, it's not like collecting clothes, it's not like collecting anything really. Games are an interactive media, and at the core of those, you want to play them, you know, and whether you actually play your shelf collection or not, you know, you're collecting them on the basis that your memories come of that game from you with a controller in hand in front of a TV in your bedroom when you were a kid, and that's why you're collecting it. And I think people lose sight of that. You know, it's the same with the arcade games. Like, I'm sure if you had the space, you'd love to pick up a nice old Jammer, something like that, and have that in the corner room. You know, fag burns and wood chips, you know, broken buttons galore. It wouldn't matter, because that's what you remember. Do you know what I mean? And people get so weird over wanting everything absolutely pristine. I mean, I am an original arcade collector myself, and I don't go in for the full restorations. I got respect for the people that do, because their pockets are deep enough and they've got the time to commit to it. But I've got 30 arcade machines, and trying to keep 10 of them running at any one time is a battle. And as long as they're working and you can go up and play them, when I get a new machine in, it'll come in, I'll usually rip up the control panel, swap the controls out for new controls that work better, you know, so you can play the game it's supposed to be a whole lot better. And then for the rest of it, I'll just tart it up, I'll touch up a bit of paint, you know, I'll replace some marquee if it's faded, and then I'll leave it at that. So I know exactly what it's like from a collecting point of view versus playing. These things are meant to be played, and if you forget that, then you just, again, you're being a bit of a dick, because, you know, your own memories certainly wouldn't have been of pristine arcade machines. They wouldn't have been of pristine consoles in 60 hertz. You know, it just wouldn't have been that way.
I think people have to realise that, you know, especially from my perspective, starting a YouTube channel and everything, like, it's nostalgia driven 100%. And that's kind of the same for this room. Like, if I look over there, there's, like, you know, Amiga games, my BBC, old Game Boy games that I used to have as a kid and stuff. And it's just like I can just walk in here and not even turn a game on, and I'm like, it's just a nostalgia overload of memories and everything. And sometimes having the best version of something or the highest level of tech doesn't fit in with that nostalgia,
Yeah, exactly that. I'm just going to give a shout out there to Planet Retro, because he said he didn't get a mention, even though he was one of the first ones to say hello. Hello. I do apologise. I'm not used to having quite so much of a varied audience on here. It's usually the same people who love to moan like me. So the way I do things is a little bit different. I definitely have the interactive chat with you all, but usually after we've discussed some of the main things ourselves. I am working my way down the list. Simon Butler says, for Pete's sake, can we not get through an episode without mentioning Street Fighter? Mr. Butler, Street Fighter was a pivotal moment in history. It defined a generation. There's no getting around it. It'd be like not mentioning Jet Set Willy. It's definitely one of those things that stands out in everyone's mind. Woody said he hated the 48K rubber key spectrum, so he's with me on that one. And he said the Beeb did have a decent keyboard. Yes, it did, to be fair.
Yeah.
Just seeing what else is down there. Emulation is a necessity, so there's other people for that. Cinny Steve says, yeah, Andy has bought them all for Arcade Club. You know what? When it comes to arcade collecting, you're totally right there. One thing that's done the rounds on the arcade collecting scene has been, it's been a bit of a standing joke that at some point or another, everyone's collection is going to end up in the hands of Andy Palmer, and they're probably right in that respect. But at the end of the day, he's not mothballing them. You know what I mean? Those machines, any machines that pass through his hands, will eventually find their way onto the floor, and you'll all get to enjoy them in one way or another. And he's not breaking the bank. As much as he's a good businessman and he's doing everything right over there at Arcade Club. When Andy does it purely out of being a collector, when you speak to him, he says he has to kind of put his businessman hat on all the time. But whenever I go to Arcade Club or anybody, if you want to have a chat with Andy Palmer, you put him to one side if you can catch him, and he will stand and he will talk games with you, and he'll say, "Oh, I've got this game coming in, and it's not that popular, but I love it, so I've bought it in because it's awesome. I want it to be out there." He's bought some really shit games that have got like really unique cabinets, because people want to see that kind of thing. He hasn't let anybody tell him what he should and shouldn't put out. Like, I haven't got a lot of love for particularly the influx of Japanese arcades that he's got coming in, but they are an interesting talking point, and he's definitely been able to capture the kind of students that are kind of about now, if you know what I mean, because they love all that quirky Japanese stuff, And let's face it, we've all gone down and had a bash on the taiko drums, or pissed about on the dance mat when we're drunk. So
that one where you flip the table.
That one's insane. I've seen some people who are really good at that one as well. And it's like telling people what they do and don't like. That's a perfect way of Andy saying, look, try this, because you might not have seen it before. And even though, like, me and we had a discussion on here the other night, me and Neil, about modern arcades being a bit shit. They are still trying to bring certain games to us and say, look, give this a try. You might just enjoy it, And I think Andy's doing the right thing by shopping the catalogues and seeing what new things are coming out and saying, give this a try. Yes, I know I've used the hatchback analogy last time. It's one of the easiest things to picture, Simon, when it comes to cars. Thanks, Alan. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream. Pete, you're in a diver's for anybody, see, there's a thing. I do like to drop in little subtle things about the things that I enjoy, and you'll notice from the way me and Pete are framed here, I'm in the SF1 because I love Nintendo, and the SF1's a superb system. And Pete's in the rather more expensive but equally cool Divers Dreamcast over there, which I would love to get my hands on, but they are even more expensive because I didn't sell quite so many. I would love to get my hands on one of those. They're awesome. And you know what I'd do just to piss you all off? I'd install a GDMU in there and not use discs just to piss you off.
Excellent.
So I'm going to grab down the last few comments here. People saying they got a small collection. Memory card readers are a great help. Yeah, I mean, if you've ever spoken to people who aren't big collectors, I know you guys on YouTube, you've kind of come together out of your love of collecting, and I know you frequent the markets and things like that because you buy and sell. When it comes to Revival, we always made it about the games, and one thing I've noticed about the people who come to ours, we get people there who you might dismiss as being a casual purely because you only see them come to the event once a year. They don't indulge in their hobby massively, but then you find out they play games more than I do, you know, or they play games more than most of us do, and it's just the way they enjoy it. Just so happens that they've, you know, we talked about having kids at the start. So you got kids, you ain't got the disposable income to collect, you ain't got the time to get these original systems set up. You just want to throw something on your living room TV and enjoy it, and you know, and those are the people who come to the events to really indulge in the nostalgia because that's the only outlet they've got to do that, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that's another argument for emulation if you've got kids, isn't it? You don't want them to wreck your original stuff.
Well, I certainly wouldn't. It's something that it does bother me actually when. I mean, I love putting my systems out, and I appreciate things are going to get damaged or lost or whatever. But sometimes one of my biggest gripes, you know when kids get that kids sticky hand thing going on where they've like eaten chocolates and crisps and they've been holding an ice cream all day and they've never washed their hands in between. They've been licking their fingers and they've wiped it on themselves and they've just gone and had a bag of chips, and then they'll walk over and they'll pick up a controller. And I'm just cringing. I'm like, no, don't do it. I'm going to have to desanitize that bastard afterwards. And it's something that really bothers me. But it's like, at the end of the day, they're enjoying themselves. So who am I to criticise? Mike Lee says, you can't play Sonic in 50 Hz anymore. I'll be honest, Mike, I'd struggle myself. It really does throw your timing off, especially because every compilation that's come ever since obviously goes with the 60 Hz version. You know, if you play any of the re-released Sega Classics collections on PlayStation or whatever now, they're obviously all based on the 60 Hz version. So going back to the 50 Hz definitely affects your game. But at the same time, if you want that real nostalgia hit, you're going to go and play any version you can, you know. Dainster says, I swear they're talking about you, Dylan. I'm assuming there's some kind of inj out there. I'm sure Dylan has brought something up here along the way. So, yeah, it looks like everyone's picking on him in the chat thread. So, I'll leave them to you. I'm on your side, Dylan. I'm on your side. He actually says loads of PAL games sell for far more than the Japanese versions. Not all. Yeah, I think that's true. I was having this discussion with one of the guys the other day. I don't know what it's like on collecting circles now, but I do know that back in the day, and this is again talking about revisionism, we got a load of PAL games I never realised even got released over here because the shops we would go to, it's St Wolverhampton, yeah, it was a big city, and we had about 10 major gaming shops there. Yeah, we had 2 games, we had Game Station, going back even further, they used to be independent shops, and then we had like loads of independent shops, and you had Currys and Our Price and HMV. They were all selling games, but you only ever saw the same like 10 games on sale. You know, if you go into a shop now, there aren't as many games being released, but you can't go in and instantly be able to buy every PlayStation 4 game because they just don't stock them. I think that's controlled the prices more than anything. I mean, I'd love to be able to play the PAL versions of some games.
Yeah. There was one the other day I was thinking that actually Dylan showed on one of his videos, like Shadow Dancer. And I never saw that PAL. The first time I played it was when I got the Japanese version, and then I found out, oh, there is a PAL version. Never knew that.
We've got a couple of people here backing up me about when it comes to arcade machines, yeah. As long as they work, that's all that matters. And I think that's at the core of it. It's about just enjoying, you know, what you've got and what you've got access to. So, right, we've been on about this now for close to an hour, guys. It soon rolls on. So I'm going to wrap this little section up. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty hard for me to argue against this gatekeeping thing because I think what's common in most of the things you brought up there, Pete, is that obviously people are doing what they enjoy. When you're making your videos on YouTube, when you're collecting your games, you're collecting what you want and what you want to play and what you want to enjoy, and you just might want to share that with other people, and you're not doing it to gloat. You're not doing it to tell people what to do. You're not trying to be an arsehole. And there are some people out there who are genuinely in, especially the retro gaming hobby, I think there are some people in this purely for the fact that they just want to lord it over people, or they want to make other people miserable. Maybe they're just jealous that you're able to collect stuff, or you're able to buy stuff and enjoy stuff that they can't find any love in because they're dead inside, you know. So and I think that's what's at the heart of it, you know. And these people, they need to be eradicated. They're just ruining it for everybody. And there's too many people out there who are like that. And I just, to be honest, they're just the ultimate killjoys. They're the kind of people you see at events, sat in a corner on their own, twiddling their thumbs because they can't be sociable with anybody and nobody likes them. So, yeah, gatekeepers, guys, definitely a contender. They're going in room 101.
Nice.
That they've got to go. And if any of you are out there like that, be constructive. Tell people, you know, share people what the possibilities are. Share people what you can do. But don't be a twat about it. You know, be nice. You know, a smile costs nothing. What's that phrase they say? It's usually less muscles to smile than it does to frown. You know, I think that applies quite heavily here. So
that's it. Right.
So gatekeepers we've covered. So right, we're going to be moving on now, and we're going to be moving on to Dainster says he's the key master. It was actually Pete's suggestion that I use that little gif there from Ghostbusters, because I love that scene anyway, and there's nothing more apt actually, because it's like whenever you hear someone getting on their high horse about these things, you're like, you know, what's your fucking problem? Right, so now we're going on to my topic, guys, and this is something I only thought of actually this morning, and it's something that bugged me, and the reason I've brought it up is because I had an unfortunate little episode last night whilst playing Streets of Rage 4, and so this is something that's going to ring true with a lot of people out there, especially if you're a Sega fan, because I'm going to be talking about that quite a lot. And if I just set it all up properly, it's going to be this. What I like to call non-co-op. And what it is, right, there's a story around this, right? Back in the day, right, I was a Nintendo fan, right? I had my NES. Most NES games, you know, they were turn-based affairs. There were a few simultaneous games, you know, but they tended to be, being Nintendo, quite cutesy and inoffensive. When the Mega Drive came along, I couldn't afford to have a Mega Drive, and I couldn't afford a 16-bit console, and I love my arcade-style games. And the thing that the Mega Drive did the best was obviously bring the arcade experience home. They got to bring home, you know, wicked things like Golden Axe, Streets of Rage wasn't an arcade game, but I'll come on to that in a minute. Golden Axe, Alien Storm, there was Great Porter Double Dragon on there. There was a lot of games like that, and a lot of those games, there's one common theme when it comes to playing them. When you play two-player, on a two-player brawler especially, the idea is that it's called co-op for a reason. You're cooperating. It's a cooperative game because you're working together to reach a goal. Now, there's some people out there, and my mate was the biggest bastard for this, right? You would play through a game, and even though you're working towards a goal, you'd be walking along a stage, and that fucker would steal all of the food pickups. They would steal all of the point pickups. They'd want to get the last hit on all of the bosses. And then when the shit really turned bad, what would they do? They would throw you under the traps. They'd give you a jab while you're pulling off a combo. And you would get your ass kicked. And by the end of the game, he'd be left trotting on, playing his game, completing the game, saying, oh, look, I completed the game. And you'd be left sat there, like, kind of like, you absolute bastard, I was trying to get there with you, you know what I mean? And those people always piss me off, man. There's some people who still do it now. I'll see it quite often. You'll see it a lot amongst, it's more prevalent now amongst little kids, I've noticed it.
Wow.
At like events and stuff. You'll see like a brother and sister or a pair of siblings playing or something. And they'll be playing something like that. Especially, I mean, I've got Double Dragon 1 and 2 arcade games. And the first thing they do is they beat the shit out of each other. You know, they don't even pass. I don't think they even realise how damn hard that game, Double Dragon 2, is, especially. And on the first screen, they're just slapping the shit out of each other, saying, "Get out of my way!" And I'm like, do you not realise you're supposed to be working towards getting to the end of that game? I mean, I don't know about you guys out there, but I was always in the support role. I was helping us get where we need to go. I would make sacrifice on getting my extra lives because I wanted to get to the end of the game. I wanted to the ending. But I had quite a few mates who were just that guy. They were that prick who would he would do whatever they could to make their score rocket. And then when you both died and you're starting again for the 12th time, they'd be like, "Well, I played well. Look at my score." And I'm like, "You wanker!" I mean, I don't know about you, Pete. I mean, have you ever were you ever that guy?
No, I was never that guy. I'm sure we all had one or two friends like that, but I think it's sad as your experience, like playing these games with them, like Streets of Rage, for an example. My mate who used to live down the road, we used to play that co-op to death, and whenever there was a pickup, we'd look at both of our healths, and if someone had lower, they go, "Right, you need the apple," or whatever. And, you know, because you're trying to complete the game. I don't think the guys who were playing selfishly got asked to play much more than that.
No, definitely not. I mean, I think it's become worse in recent years because when you were playing side by side with somebody, if your mate was being a knob, you could just give him a jab in the head and then that, give him a dead arm or something, and that was it, job done, But or you could unplug his controller just to piss him off. But when you're playing online, it's like this whole thing around trolling and griefing and things like that. It's a lot easier when you're a faceless, person on the other end of the internet. I hear it's quite prevalent in first-person games. Now, I don't play any first-person shooters. I can't stand the genre. But I've seen how raged my nephew gets, man. He loves things like Call of Duty and that. And he gets pissed off because he'll be on a team and there'll be he says he'll get pissed off because they're trying to reach like a target or something. And there'll be some wanker on that team who's gone on because he's seen a YouTube video of some dickhead who's found out that by doing this combination of shots, you can reach this weird platform, and from there you can start teabagging people, and it's just like they're not being a team player, you know what I mean? And I can imagine the screams just getting worse and worse, and I think that has led very much to what I see now at the events, except that they don't realise that when they're sat playing with their siblings are just going to turn around and go smack around the head, you know what I mean? They start pissing about. I think there's a difference between doing it as a joke. I mean, we used to do it quite a lot. I'm trying to think which console it was now. There was one console we had, and it had particularly flaky controller ports. It wasn't like a console that's known for that. It just so happened that my mate didn't look after his fucking system, and his controller ports were really ropey, so when you pushed it in, it was just like there was no click, there was no contact. So what we used to do, because he was notorious for doing this shit, we would just, like, while he was out in the room getting a drink or something, you just go up and you just ease that controller out by a couple of millimeters so it wasn't making contact, and then he'd start playing his games and like a couple of his buttons wouldn't be working or something like that, and you'd be like, yes, yeah, you fucking like it. I think there's some dickheads out there who are constantly like that. Streets of Rage 4, it's come back to haunt me quite badly because I don't know if you've played it at all.
No,
you've not played it yet. You've not gone down.
I'm waiting on my physical copy. I begrudge paying for it twice.
Oh my god, it's how long you got to wait for that? Is it 4 months or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. I'm very patient.
You know what? It'll be worth the wait. It is a really good game, and as a collector's thing, I can understand that. But what you find a lot of is like the way it's structured. I mean, I'm not going to give away everything, but the way the game is structured, you can actually play it in like chapters rather than through in one go, if you know what I mean. What sucks is the way the multiplayer works. Is that, like anything, someone can drop out of a game, but in this type of game, it'd be quite easy if they dropped out to just let them die. They could have programmed the game so that person dies, but it doesn't. If they drop out of a game and you've progressed all the way through a stage to the boss and they drop out, especially if they die and lose all their lives, what's their instinct to do? They'll say, well, fuck you then, I'm off, and they'll just quit. And if you haven't finished your game, they won't stick around and let you finish your game. They'll quit out the game and you get reset back to the title screen. You know what I mean? So you can imagine the problems that's going to cause. And on a cooperative game, it's like, people should know that with a cooperative beat 'em up like that, you've got to stick around. You've got to see it through. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be there. You've got to try and work together so that doesn't happen. And if it does, just sit down for 2 minutes and let your friend fucking finish the level at least. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because if you do finish a level, you then picks up and they can carry on with you. So, you know, why they're being such dicks? It doesn't make any sense to me. Wow. And there's a lot of people out there who'll steal your food and steal your points. And points are more important than ever in Streets of Rage 4. So be prepared. You'll get some nasty memories back of that one when you finally do get it. Yeah. I know that me and Andy Johnson were playing it through on some of my streams a couple of weeks ago, and we were playing proper cooperatively. We wanted to go through and complete it, and I actually wigged out quite bad on the last stage, and Andy ended up having to finish it off for me. And I didn't. I mean, it was my stream, so it would have been pretty bad if I'd quit out and just quit the stream out. But I mean, I could have done, and that would have been the dick thing to do. But it's like at the end of the day, I stuck around, and I was just trying to encourage him on. And when we were playing, it was like you say, we would see who's got the lower energy, and you'd leave the health on screen until you were absolutely at lowest health before you picked up a full health and icon and things like that. So why would you be a dick about it? Do you know what I mean? Streets of Rage is actually a really good example because, of course, that's got the classic decision at the end of Streets of Rage 1, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Were you ever that guy that turned around and said, "Do you want to join us?" and did the opposite of whatever your friend picked?
Yeah, I think I probably did that a couple of times. Yeah, mix it up a bit.
It's good to, well, you needed to do to see all the endings, obviously, because if you did that, you obviously, I'm sure I'm not giving away any spoilers here for anyone who hasn't completed Streets of Rage 1. The end of Streets of Rage 1, we're talking about the bit where Mr. X asks you if you want to become his right-hand man. If you both say no, you fight him. If you both say yes, you get sent back to level 6, I think it is, isn't it? The one with the travelators and the presses and everything. If you both say yes, you'll become his right-hand man, it sends you back. But if you both say something different, if one of you says yes and one of you says no, it makes you fight each other. And then obviously that goes down and sucks out all the continues because you can just keep continuing if you get beat. So what you could do is just let yourself get beat to take the last continue and then smash your friend's head in who's only got one life left. And you could then go through and complete the game on your own. So, yeah, I think that game is intentionally designed to make you a dick. Double Dragon was the same because you fought for the girl at the end of the game, didn't you?
And they were brothers, weren't they? I always thought it's a bit of a weird scenario.
Yeah, that's it. I fought this gang to get my girlfriend back, and then your brother's like, "Well, I want her now." You know, it's a bit. Let's face it, though. Stranger things have happened in Japanese anime films than a couple of brothers fighting.
Wow, and in Japanese history.
Oh yeah, definitely. So that is my whole point about non-co-op. It can be frustrating when people talk about. I was talking about like people on first-person shooters trying to pull certain tricks, and I think there's a problem with it now where. People like trying to get trophies and stuff like that in games, and you're not always aware if you're not on like a microphone link up or anything. They're bastards for like obviously they're not going to tell you or bother to send you a message through your virtual keyboard and say, "Listen, I'm trying to get a trophy. That's why I'm lingering in the background and not helping you." I think it can be even more problematic.
But there's I mean, there used to be years ago. I never play online anymore, but there used to be these. Like booster forums and stuff. So if you're after a specific trophy, you can like meet up with people on that game and help each other out getting the trophies. Ah,
right, okay. So I wasn't actually aware of that.
Maybe, so they shouldn't be doing it in some normal
online
game. That's a bit unfair, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's people out there now doing even more dickish things because you can exploit like latency and lag and things like that, can't you? I remember playing one of the few first-person shooter things I did get into was which one was the first? There was a Call of Duty with the zombies. Was it World at War? I think it was the first one that had zombies.
I don't know. They all the same.
They all blend into the same. Yeah. Well, anyway, when that first zombies one came out, and I did used to play that a lot, but you used to get really bad like desync problems where people would be a massive distance away from you. You know, the ping would be too high. and they knew how to take advantage, because if they were like the host of the game, and you were like on as like a slave to their server, whatever happened on their screen happened first, and any delay, you only saw your end really, and people would take advantage. So people would steal your weapons, they would steal your kills, or they'd run off and just leave you to be fucking annihilated while they ran off and got the high scores for themselves. And you would see on their screen them being a dick, but you wouldn't be able to do anything about it, because as far as the server was concerned, it had already happened, you know. So what you were responding to, you weren't reacting in real time to what was going on screen. So more opportunity for people to be dickheads. Do you ever go online and play at all?
No, well, I did the other day, because during this lockdown, a load of my mates have got PS3s. You know, no one's really got a PS4. I've got a PS4 and a Switch for like modern stuff, but yeah, I've got a PS3 up here. So we've been playing a bit of Blur, which is like a racing game, online. But prior to that, it's been years and years and years since I went online, like 6-7 years since I played a game online.
Been that long, has it?
I think so, yeah. It doesn't interest me at all.
Do you ever sit and take a place at the multiplayer stations when you go to events?
Oh yeah, I'm straight on like the multiplayer stations, like where it's not split screen.
No, well, whatever. I mean, at the events, like for example, we'll set up like a Mario Kart on multiplayer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm straight on GoldenEye every time.
GoldenEye, yeah.
Kick someone's ass at GoldenEye. Like everywhere I go, I'm fucking kicking someone's ass on that.
He's laying down the gauntlet here, guys. So yeah, if you're a GoldenEye player,
I'll take on anyone who wants to challenge me at that game. Like I went to Arcade Club recently with a friend of mine who loves GoldenEye. He's like you know, absolutely obsessed with GoldenEye. Says he's amazing at GoldenEye. I beat him 21 in a death match. Yeah, so like I'm just crushing people, man. I'll take on anyone. If anyone was watching wants to take me on at the next event.
You know what? I won't be one of them, because I'm not a. Well, GoldenEye's not a bad game, but I'm very outspoken about the N64 controller, which I fucking hate. I'm sorry, I do.
It's awful, but it's perfect for GoldenEye. I've got one of those. The retro fighter.
Retro fighters, yeah. We were talking about that the other day. That makes it a lot better.
Well, I don't think it does. I played it yesterday, actually on a little PVM thing that I got off Dana.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get on with it. I ended up plugging the original controller back in, because I've just learned over like God knows how many thousands of hours.
You've adjusted to the crap factor. That's what it is.
Yeah. But any other game apart from GoldenEye, and I'm all in with that.
The retro fighters.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I love couch co-op so much. So like when I buy games that are multiplayer, like Street Fighter, I've got Street Fighter 5 that I've had for about a year, and it's still sealed just because my mates haven't come around and we haven't played it yet. Do you know what I mean?
And you don't want to play it online because everybody's a pro or a troll or...
Yeah, I won't play it online. I've not really got any interest in playing a single player. It's like a me and my mates game.
Yeah.
And quite a few games, like modern games, I'll buy like that and just won't touch them unless my mate's around. But yeah, I mean, there's loads of good, like the good like party games at the events and stuff, in my opinion, are because obviously GoldenEye is not everyone's cup of tea.
No.
But like stuff like Bomberman, Mario Kart, like you said.
Micro Machines?
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Micro Machines. Micro Machines is one of the best local co-op, local multiplayer games.
Superb game. We usually put the Mega Drive one out when we put that out because the Mega Drive Turbo Tournament is brilliant. Obviously, you've got the J Kart, haven't you? Which makes it easy to set up on 4-player without needing a multi-tap. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's interesting what you say. It's weird, but when we do put out the multiplayer games at the events, we do tend to put out the games where they're more. They are designed to be versus, to be against each other. I always found it was a bit of a sad thing as time moved on that games became less and less cooperative when they created multiplayer. It was all about just kind of getting in the face of your friends. 2 seconds while my dog's going nuts. Sorry, guys. my neighbour decides this is the time of night he wants to do his gardening for some reason, and so the dogs go absolutely apeshit when he's out the front. I do think it's a bit sad that, like, obviously gaming's gone that way and people don't play as many cooperative games anymore. And cooperative games are what I enjoy more. You know, if I'm sitting having a casual game, I really don't want to be stressing the hell out of my hands. I mean, I haven't got the best hands in the world anyway. I don't want to be ripping the shit out of my hands, and I definitely don't want to be doing it with some person out there who's just out to, like, just try and win one over on me, you know what I mean? And it's a lot of two-player games. You can't play in like a cooperative mode. And there's some games where they say, oh, you couldn't really make that game work. One thing a lot of people ask is, why has there never been more co-op Resident Evils? Once they moved into the third-person over-the-shoulder view, there should have been a lot more done with, like, two-player games, and they did create modes that were like that in some of the later entries in the series, like the what they call the Revelation series. There's two-player modes on that you can do where it's cooperative. Resident Evil 5, but it's like Resident Evil 5, it wasn't the best in the series, but you could play a two-player split-screen thing where you're both cooperative all the way through the game. But then, like, in other entries, they've chosen not to do that, you know. I think they missed a trick, really, when it came to like Resident Evil 2 Remake, for example. They could have made that. With the technology we got now, why couldn't they have made it? Because obviously you've got two characters that are pivotal to the story. They could have made it whereby the two people played together and made it a full cooperative game where, you know, one of you starts as Leon and one of you starts as Claire, and you both start your missions at the same time, and you have to work your way through the police station together. You know, obviously crossing paths every so often. They could have designed it like that. You know, they could have done that, but it's all more about the versus thing these days. You know, and the only games they put out that they focus on multiplayer, they make them too much about the multiplayer. Like Street Fighter 5, when that first came out, it didn't even have a one-player mode, did it?
No. I avoided it for ages because it was just really incomplete.
Well, that's even though you don't play one-player mode. It wasn't the fact that there wasn't a. It was the fact that it wasn't a complete game. Without a one-player mode, it's not a complete game, is it?
Yeah, it's kind of one of the things that I just don't like to support is companies trying to get away with that. You know, whether I play single player or not, you can't be releasing incomplete stuff.
No, it's not on. It's definitely not on. I know the whole DLC thing was a sore subject for Andy Johnson, who's watching right now. Actually, we were talking about like the DLC and things like that, and the fact they're making games where they intentionally leave out entire modes that could be in there from day one. You know, and there's no reason they shouldn't be. So don't support it, and that they won't continue to do it. You know,
I mean, they're releasing games that if you tot up all the component parts you have to buy to make a complete game, it's like, you know, 160, 200 quid or something for a game.
It's stupid.
It's like I begrudge paying 40 quid for a game, to be honest. You know, for a modern game. Yeah, I mean, that's just ridiculous. And the problem is, like, everyone can moan at it, you know, oh, EA's done this and so-and-so's done this. Like, we're the ones buying the stuff. You know, you can't just shift all the fault, you know, and admit no fault on the purchasing side of it. And I think that, like, especially with stuff like pre-orders, I try to avoid pre-ordering modern stuff because it just lets them get away with whatever they want to do. But it's not going to make any difference because, you know, every time there's a new FIFA or there's a new Call of Duty or whatever, the masses are going to buy it, aren't they?
Yeah, they are at the moment, especially. And I think, I mean, that they definitely tapped into. It's almost like a primal thing, that the fact they made them so heavily focused on multiplayer and one-upping your friends, they've kind of built the games entirely around that model. But, you know, trends change and people's interests change and people's motivations change, and eventually people just get sick. People will get sick of listening to 10-year-old squeakers in America telling you they're going to fuck your mom when they've just teabagged your face, when they've got you, oh, they've headshotted you with some fucking no-scope or something, or whatever it is that they talk about. I don't know all the terminology, but I know the way it runs, and it's just not for me at all. I'm just going down the chat list here, seeing what people say about it. I mean, Woody says he doesn't play anything online anymore because he just, for that exact reason. Dylan says co-op is lost on me as it's all online these days. I don't play online. Yeah, I think that's the point we're trying to make, is that element of the gameplay has been lost because the kind of co-op the kind of multiplayer they want you to have these days is more focused on just trying to one-up each other. And unless you're like shit up from day one, there's no point you playing because you'll just get your ass handed to you every single time you play. And you're not always down for that kind of gameplay, are you? You know. Planet Retro, so why are you always online requesting to watch my gameplay, Dylan? Dylan's really catching some flack here in the chat.
Dylan's obviously living vicariously through Planet Retro Al, isn't he? Rather than play online himself, and that's very wise, I think.
Woody says he gave up with Street Fighter Online as well. Too many dickheads who get butter when you beat them. Yeah, I think with the two-player games, from what I understand, the way people play Street Fighter and fighting games online now is there's like an unspoken rule where you have to play like a series. You can't just fight them one-on-one and walk away. You have to play like best of 3 or best of 5, don't you? Else they call you a dickhead and they'll start blocking you. And I know you can tag each other as being the kind of people who run to warn others, if you know what I mean. So yeah, and the thing is, no one wants to sit there and take a pasting for 5 fucking rounds, do they?
No.
Mike Lee's. Sorry, mate, go on.
I was just going to say, Duncan's saying to stick with Street Fighter 4, so he's obviously. Maybe I should leave that sealed, my copy of Street Fighter 5.
To be honest, I mean, Woody actually came round ours. Obviously, Woody's a member of my team. He comes round mine for I do like a Christmas poker game and gaming session, and he came round the other Christmas actually, and he brought Street Fighter 5. And it was the first I'd played it actually, and I wasn't a big fan at all. Compared to Street Fighter 4, absolutely loved it. I thought it's a really well put together game. It brought back what Street Fighter 2 had, but obviously they added in a lot of the techs and stuff that Street Fighter 3 introduced. As a versus game, a multiplayer game, yeah, Street Fighter 4 it was a very, very good game. You know, it had a big obviously esports scene around it. You know, and I just think Street Fighter 5 they missed a trick by going in a far too technical direction.
Right.
They changed like a lot of the I'm thinking of an example here. Have you ever played any of the newer Mortal Kombats?
I think I might have played one briefly.
Well, if you've ever played, say for example, if you ever played any of the early Mortal Kombats or even a Street Fighter game, right? You can go to a Street Fighter game and you can pick up the controller or the joystick and buttons, whatever. And you can pull off a few basic special moves, can't you? Because you know a character, you know a certain move set, and you kind of want to just go from there. Street Fighter 5 pulled the same problem that the Mortal Kombat 9 and 10 did. Some of the basic moves you would have done, like that you would instinctively know how to do. For example, Scorpion, right? Everybody knows it's back, low punch, throw a spear. The early Mortal Kombats were all like that. When it first moved into 3D, it was the same motion. And yet when they brought out the newer Mortal Kombats, obviously, that were actually any good, they changed the control scheme and they made it something completely different. So there was no instinctiveness anymore. You had to go to a completely different moveset. And whereas you would have had somebody who had, you know, charge moves, is now uses like roll moves, things like that. Street Fighter 5, they pulled the same thing and they've changed up some of the moves beyond recognition. Ken no longer does a hurricane kick.
What?
Didn't you know that?
No.
Ken doesn't do a hurricane kick. So I instinctively, we started playing and I started trying to bust out some of my first learned combos with Ken. And I've tried to do a hurricane kick and he does this stupid... It's like a turnaround kick. It's a bit like, if you ever played Art of Fighting or Fatal Fury, it's a bit more like one of the turn kicks that one of the Bogards does. It's not the hurricane kick anymore. Do you see? And it breaks it for me. So
I'm just going to try this bloody game and see before I even open it.
The more you hear about Street Fighter 5, the less appealing it is. Going back down the list anyway, you're going to get really pissed off the first time you play it now.
Yeah.
I had a mate back in the day who played Quake 3 and he used the name A Little Girl. So when he killed somebody, the game would say, Zero Cool was fragged by a little girl. Good times. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for one-upping your friends on games. everybody loves that feeling when you're playing like a 4-player game and you come out on top. You can't be like a Mario Kart game. The earlier Mario Karts before the blue shell became a fucking complete cop-out that just leveled the playing field too much. Yeah, the earlier Mario Karts, when you win, you get a sense of satisfaction that you've beat 3 of your friends. It's a race. It's intended to be like that. GoldenEye, you want to be the last man standing. That was the way it worked, But when you're playing a game that the goal of the game is to reach, a unified goal, and somebody's there just completely, backstabbing you and fucking knifing you in the back, literally, it's a real pisser, man. And it's something that really gets my goat. Kevin Tasker came in with a very late "What's up, guys?" Dylan says, I briefly played a bit of Halo 3 and Killzone 2 back in the day, but that was about it. I'd never play a fighter though, as I get my ass handed to me. You know what? I think I would have by all accounts now. Pretty decent at Street Fighter 2 still. Can hold my own on Street Fighter 4, but that's about it. He says, just download Fortnite. You know what? Let's not even go into Fortnite. Fortnite, I know for a fact, is coming up on here, and it's the only. I think it's the only game named by its name that people want to put into Room 101. Not a genre, not a topic, but that entire fucking game. Everybody wants to see in Room 101. And now about 3 or 4 people have suggested it, so I'm waiting for the right person to put the case forward so it can be completely irrefutable, because I want that one burned for all eternity, because I absolutely fucking hate that game. That is the epitome of all that is wrong with modern gaming, in my opinion. Dylan says he doesn't have a PlayStation Plus account either. You know what? I didn't even know until the other day that with PlayStation, I thought you needed a PlayStation Plus account to even be able to go online and download stuff. I didn't realise you couldn't. I didn't realise that you could still go and download stuff. I thought you needed a PlayStation Plus account to even go online, but you don't. You only need it to play games online.
Yeah, I mean, during the PS3 era, it was completely free to play online.
That's right, yeah.
And then this gen, they kind of started charging for it. But I mean, I had the PS Plus all the way through the PS3 era, even though you didn't get the online features, just because it's free games. Like the amount of free games, hundreds of games I got on that. They're pretty ropey now, the free games, because I don't play that many games on the PS4 anyway. But yeah, I mean, Xbox have been charging for going online for ages, haven't they? So
yeah. Gernaldino says, do you keep picking Oddjob in GoldenEye?
No, of course I bloody don't. How dare you? How dare you?
You know what? The first few times I played that, my mate was one of the few of us who actually had an N64. We all had PlayStations, and he was a rich kid, so he got every console when it first came out. And when he brought N64 around with GoldenEye, we didn't even know this to start with, and that bastard just kept winning, and we didn't know why. And it's because he always kept picking fucking Oddjob, and we didn't realise that he's obviously, with him being that few inches short than every other character, you had to adjust your aim any time you got near him to make a shot on him. It was ridiculous.
Rob Gernaldino, next time I see you at an event, you can be Oddjob, mate. my go-to guy is Trevelyan normally, like, Sean Bean. Sean Bjorn. So I'll, yeah, there you go.
Well, Danes has laid down the gauntlet there. He said online gaming ain't for everyone. Only if you're good at games or I'm carrying you like I do, Al. So they're having a little poke amongst themselves there. Paul Cole said he used to love playing Kill Oddjob. Rules were you could only karate chop, and one person went as Oddjob.
Bloody hell.
Andy Johnson says Turbo Tournament 96 is the shiz. It definitely is. Fucking love that game. The PlayStation Micro Machines V3 as well. We used to get a lot of play out of that. I really liked that one. The fact you could actually perceive a little bit of depth with the angles that they used actually helped you play that one a fair bit. But it's still incredibly fast and incredibly fucking hard, I can tell you that. Micro Maniacs as well. That's another good one that gets underappreciated.
There was that one, Mashed. Do you ever play Mashed?
Never played that one. I heard of it.
That's kind of a similar. It's really fun, like multiplayer kind of little car game on the PS2 and Xbox. Was it original Xbox? Yeah. But yeah, brilliant game that.
Not played. I'll have to check that one out. Rob says, make sure you publicly advertise when Fortnite's up for going in, so I can get a pizza in and some beers. Put my feet up and slowly watch it burn. Yeah, I think Fortnite is universally despised. Not just, I think it's of gamers of a certain age just generally despise it. But there's a lot to be said about the things it represents in gaming and all the things that are wrong with gaming. To be honest, I think a lot of people are touching it. Woody said he played Mashed and he agreed it's a good game. So much hate for a game none of you played. Come back when you've had a go. Are you referring to fucking Fortnite, Dane? Dane, if you're playing Fortnite, mate, I think you need to hand in your cock and your balls because you've just lost your man pass. Right, so sorry guys, I know I've kind of dragged this one on a little bit longer than normal. We're up to an hour and a half again. It's only supposed to be an hour long episode, and each episode gets longer and longer. but there's always things that lead on from there. So right, anyway guys, non-co-op, yeah. People out there are arseholes. If you're going to play a versus game, play a versus game. You're going to want to beat your pals, play those kind of games. But if you're the kind of person, and I drop into a game of Final Fight, and I'm about to spinning pile drive someone, and you walk up behind me and kick me in the back of the fucking head, all because you can't hold your own, I'm going to bitch slap you, and I'm going to bitch slap you good. So, non-co-op, guys, goes in room 101 as well tonight. Right, so that was episode 5 of Retrogaming Room 101, guys. Dana, I know you're still watching, mate, by the way. I want you to drop me a message, mate, because I've got you coming on very soon. Let me know what you want to do about it. Maybe you could put a case forward for Fortnite, since you love it so much. You can counter whoever it is on here that's going to be tearing it apart instead of me. But yeah, there's a lot more subjects coming up. I think later in this week we've got a member of Aaron's band, I think, who's coming on to do this. I need to check in with that. Early next week we've got Simon Butler coming on, and Simon Butler's definitely got some choice words to say about a lot of things. So when he comes on, you're definitely going to check in on that. And I think Barry Morse is also joining me next week. But I hope you enjoyed the episode anyway, guys. Thanks for joining us. And if you've got any suggestions or you want to be on here yourself, drop me a message and I will try and schedule and get you on very soon. But thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your evening.